So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have David Llo, CEO of IntelliResponse. Hi, David.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well, sir. So, David, for the benefit of our listeners and readers, can you tell us a little bit about you and also about the work that you do?
Oh, certainly. I'll talk about the company perspective first, and then maybe a little bit about me and how I ended up where I am today.
Of course.
IntelliResponse itself is a solution that's really focused on really three core pillars from our standpoint: management through a virtual agent or virtual assistant, understanding those conversations and engagement through a voice of customer or voices product. Mm-hmm. And then what we call our moment of truth capability offers, which is really the ability to deliver a relevant offer to a customer engaging with the virtual agents. And that's really the set of three pillars that IntelliResponse really looks at resolving for our customers.
Okay.
From a little bit of history, it's actually interesting. IntelliResponse actually came out of an amazing tech startup area called Waterloo University.
Okay.
Much like MIT in the U.S., Waterloo in the Canadian environment is known for their tech startups. And the founders were really trying to solve a very basic problem, which was answering, of all things, students' questions, since typically a college or university can't afford the scope of solutions that a commercial company can.
Sure.
So schools such as U of T, Western, Warwick, Stanford, Yale, Cornell, Penn State, and over 100 others all used our technology to fundamentally interact through this virtual assistant or agent with students.
Okay.
And so that's where the company really started. Now, I took over as CEO during the beginning of the big recession we all faced worldwide, which was a great time to jump into the company. And for me, I'm a geek as it relates to my background, computer science background, and software development.
Right.
And for many, many years, I was CTO of startup companies or larger companies, and then eventually came to IntelliResponse because they were looking for a CTO, and I looked at their patents, and I thought, they're so elegant and simple. I love how they solve the problem, and they do it without trying to drive a nail into a board with a sledgehammer. They use a hammer.
Right.
And so that really attracted me to the company, and I was the CTO and VP of their services area for the first couple of years, and then took over as CEO in 2009. So that's a bit about where the company was historically, and then myself and how I came to be at this great company, IntelliResponse.
So can you tell? I mean, you're doing I did some research into IntelliResponse. You're doing some fascinating things with this intelligent agent technology in the customer service space, and I guess primarily in the self-service space. I mean, can you tell me a little bit more about what you're doing, how you're doing it without revealing any trade secrets, obviously, and what are the implications for, say, some of your clients and things, and the industry as a whole?
Certainly. We don't mind sharing a little bit of our secret sauce because a lot of our core technologies are patented, so you can go online and actually read them if you really want to put yourself to sleep one evening and the shot of brandy isn't working. So I think I fundamentally believe that one of the most important aspects of what we are doing is not simply the self-service engaging customers. We're definitely doing that. That's almost table stakes. I don't believe you can actually be in this market and actually not do that as the most base requirement of your solution today.
Right.
But what I believe we're actually helping do is we're helping take customers and our customers specifically and their consumers through this self-service journey.
Right.
Our virtual agent can be an expert about the business while she or he is capable of learning and growing with the business. So our virtual agents actually learn, and you don't have to be an expert to help teach our virtual agents new concepts they don't already know. But what I think our real benefit comes from truly assisting an organization in understanding what's top of mind with their customers. So it's one thing to interact from a self-service point of view, but you often hear how organizations are customer-centric or customer-focused, yet the ways in which they engage are ancient.
Right.
Surveys and focus, really, that is so last century. And what we do is we enable our customers to capture really 100% of every customer interaction that their customer is having with the virtual agent.
Right.
And I think that's critical.
Okay.
As Gartner noted, in many ways, we're measuring the voice of the customer 100% of the time for every transaction, not 0.5% of the time through a survey or a focus group of 60 people every 6 months.
Okay.
So I think that's one of the critical things that our technology allows our customers to do and service their customers.
And so tell me, you talked about the intelligent agent technology and its ability to learn. Is that, are you applying artificial intelligence to intelligent agent technology, or how are you doing that?
We're doing it through a combination of different approaches. So you'll hear a lot of solutions out in the market talk about natural language processing.
Okay.
And although we think in many ways that technology is interesting, we actually again think it's absolutely overkill. And frankly, it's very tough for most organizations to support unless they spend a considerable amount of money in services to actually deliver that solution.
Right.
So we went about the problem very differently. We said, if the virtual agent really understands the hundreds, if not thousands, of ways a question can be asked, then we're really much further ahead if we can do that and also help our virtual agent learn new questions that attach to answers. So let me give you an example.
Okay.
So you walk into your banking environment today, or you have a question. The question is, you want to cancel a check. You've issued a check by mistake, you're not buying the goods, and you want to cancel it. Mm-hmm. But if you just cancel a check from a self-service point of view at Barclays or Royal Bank or at Fulton Financial, you're going to get a litany of possible search results back that are going to tell you how you might go about canceling a check. In fact, we just did one right now, and we came back with about 380 results for one of these banking clients.
Right.
But there is an answer for that. So our virtual agent actually gets trained to understand the nature of the questions and the answer that belongs with those questions. So if you said, how do I cancel a check, or how do I stop a payment, or even how a gym is taking money out of my account, what do I do?
Right.
Our virtual agent understands that each of those questions, even though they're very unique, are actually the same concept or the same intent.
Right.
And therefore, our virtual agent has learned that all three of those things are the same, and all the variants on those three are the same, and can answer that with the one right answer. And if a new question comes in that we've never seen before, like say when text speak became very popular.
Right.
One of our virtual agent can learn by someone in the business side simply saying, oh, that question should have been answered, and they drag it and they drop it on top of the right answer. And our virtual agent will learn from that action and interaction similar to that. Whereas most solutions out there would require really smart people with PhDs to start describing all the specifics of how that question and the nouns and the verbs flowed in order to do it. Completely different solution in terms of its complexity. So again, I think it's that simplicity and elegance that attracted me first to the company that we've really driven forward to really make that an engaging and easy process with a virtual agent that can learn.
So actually, what you're doing is you're almost like, as you say, via drag and drop sort of process on the assumption that there is an unanswered question, that you are your system is building dynamic links between possible questions and answers. Is that right?
Yes, basically between intent and answers. Think about it. Think about a child, and you're trying to teach we all have our children, the difference between a football, maybe, and a basketball.
Right.
Or, it could be, what's the difference between cricket and baseball?
Right.
There's different concepts and different questions the child's going to ask that you can help deliver answers to. And as you get variants on those questions that come in from the child, you can help hone which answers you're going to deliver back as a parent.
Right.
Well, basically, we go through that same process, but we don't require, imagine now the only way that you could talk to your child is by having an expert in the middle, a PhD in linguistics that could only understand that and translate it for the child. That wouldn't be a great experience or likely a very timely one or a very cost-effective one.
Sure.
We eliminate the need for that person so that you can speak to that individual directly and help them learn. And that's what we do with our virtual agent. We really help it learn when it doesn't know a concept. But we benefit from the fact that we understand many industries and we own the ability to use the interactions that we have with our customers across many industries to basically build a smarter virtual agent as well.
So your clients are benefiting from the work that you're doing with other clients too.
Correct. Yes.
So actually, your virtual agent isn't just getting siloed into kind of like different client experiences. Actually, you're learning across the piece, across different sectors and different client bases.
That's right, Adrian. Actually, for one great example, when we walk into, we have universities and colleges in the UK, Australia, Singapore, Canada, the US. We see the hundreds of millions of questions that are asked across students.
Yeah.
In all these different areas. And we're able to use the power of that, almost think of the power of the crowd's questions, to actually make the virtual agent more intelligent. If you think about it, Siri, for example, is only smart when Apple does an update to the iOS software. Siri can't learn.
Yes.
We can learn.
Okay.
So imagine, if you think about it that way, you're doing something on your phone, and your phone or the interaction you're having on your phone isn't understood. Imagine you could train it at that moment in time what you meant.
Yes.
And how that would improve your overall experience as a customer.
So how does that does that not require you guys to do a lot of work to start with, to such that you're not starting from? I guess is that a function of your experience across the piece and the clients and industries that you work in to help you kickstart new clients so they don't actually have to start from zero?
It's a great question, because one would assume that when you're starting, let's say, in a business or industry that you have no knowledge of, that it's a long process.
Yeah.
I'll give you two examples. One large clients as well that's well known in growing in Europe and the UK as well as Kobo, the e-reader company.
Okay.
So if you can imagine, when we started with Kobo, we knew nothing about the e-reader or e-book space because we never had a client in that space.
Right.
But within 19 business days, they were launched.
Okay.
So our virtual agent can learn using different tools and technologies we have very quickly about the nature of the questions and the content that's relevant.
Uh-huh.
So we have methods of doing that really, it's like putting your child through an accelerated learning program. We have great ways of doing it that, again, don't require a lot of people.
Right.
But it uses our technologies to do that. So we launched Kobo, and now Kobo is in 12 languages worldwide with us.
Wow.
And scales beautifully. Another great example was we ended up helping the Canadian Olympic Committee for the Beijing Olympics build a virtual agent for the committee website in 2 official languages, and we only had 12 business days to do that.
Right.
And so, again, we're not talking about a team of people. We're talking about one of our service team members, our knowledge base analysts, working with a customer and a project manager to really get that going. So, again, we have very adaptive technology that allows customers, even the largest ones, or some of the largest banks in the world that use our technology, to do it very rapidly. Typically, the customer is going to be, in some ways, much slower because of governance than we are from a standpoint of implementation.
And so, I mean, the sort of stuff that you're talking about, I mean, it seems, and the service you offer, it seems a bit of a no-brainer in many respects. I mean, what in your experience generally stops executives from adopting this type of technology, or this type of approach?
Well, I think there's 2 parts of it, and we can go back also and talk a bit maybe about the self-service features as well. But what I would say is that fundamentally, I think many organizations today are overwhelmed.
Right.
There's an aspect, I would say, of willful blindness that comes into play here.
Okay.
I'll use an example. I was speaking to a group of about 110 chief marketing officers
Yeah.
from very large companies down to mid-size, and we were at this conference, and I asked a very basic question. I said to the audience before I even started, when was the last time that anyone in this room actually looked at your search log results?
Right.
Something very innocuous.
Okay.
It's a poor proxy in my mind, as search doesn't necessarily really articulate the voice of customers since there's no real intent data, but it's data everyone we know has.
Yeah.
But the scary thing is I started at 3 months, and by the time I got to a year, finally 5 hands went up in the audience.
Right.
The way I equated it, Adrian, it's like driving your car looking through the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
How do you know what's top of mind? And you're not even using the information that's there. So in Teleresponse, we fundamentally believe that today's executives are all drowning in data.
Right.
We don't need more data, whether it's big data or whether it's small data. We don't need more data. We need to be able to fundamentally act on the data we already have.
Yes.
And if you think about it, Barclays or CIBC or Arvis Bank, they have all this data about you as a person, maybe as a credit card holder.
Uh-huh.
But when's the last time, for example, that you actually got a truly targeted and meaningful offer from that credit card company?
Yeah. Exactly.
Probably never. Or maybe in the last couple of years you got one.
If I got lucky.
You did. So, we look at it as less than a fraction of 1% of data that's collected by organizations today is barely ever actioned on.
Right.
And I believe the challenge is that these executives actually need to take a step back and walk through their own engagement strategies and critically ask themselves, A, are these engagement approaches working? And B, how do you bring together basically the engagement, the understanding, and the action? Ours isn't the only solution really that delivers on the aspects of that first part of the problem around engagement, but it is the one that brings together these 3 core components, the engagement, understanding, and action.
Uh-huh.
And to me, I think that's what the executives need to be thinking about. And I think the challenge is they're frozen by what seems to be such an overwhelming problem.
Right. They can't quite get their heads around it.
Agreed.
I guess in many ways that what they get. What's it called? It's a bit like are you familiar with the concept of the tyranny of choice?
Yes.
It's
and too many choices.
Yeah, exactly. So it's almost like that. You get caught that rabbit and headlights type of approach. You're like, oh, I can't make it. There's too much choice. I can't make a choice. There's too many things. But then I guess let me go step back a little bit and ask you a question around about self-service, because self-service in the customer service space is this. I mean, it's a fast-growing category, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think that are customers just frustrated with current channels and therefore looking for a better and simpler solution from self-service, or is there something else going on?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because if I look at the problem very bluntly, and I'll be a bit tongue-in-cheek here, companies don't want to provide service channels, and consumers don't want to use them.
Yeah, that's true. We just want stuff that works when it works, kind of when we buy it, I guess.
True, and the company wants to think that their products, which for the most part simply work, they're easy to use, and that the consumer's going to have a great brand experience and come back.
Yeah,
it's perhaps a bit of a utopian view, but we're starting to see this in companies that are almost driving towards a zero live service approach. If you think of Google or Pebble or some of the tech companies, for example, there is no phone number.
No.
You can't call them with a customer service challenge. You might be able to send an email. You might be able to post a problem.
Yeah.
But how do you help customers in almost a zero live environment?
Do you know that? I just had a bit of an aside. Do you know that I've met a couple of Google employees, and I think it's part of company policy that many of them don't put phone numbers on their cards.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just about kind of like trying to call kind of Google. You generally can't call anybody at Google.
I can tell you, when I was trying to get a hold of Google Glass because I wasn't in the U.S., that, aside from being able to go through an email address, you're virtually, or using your network, which I then used, you're virtually cut off from doing that. Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because if the service that Google offers is seamless enough,
Yeah.
if the user experience is strong enough that you never have to talk to them, it sounds like maybe not a win-win from a company point of view, because Nordstrom's or some of the big department stores that believe very much in customer intimacy may say it's terrible.
Yeah.
But I would argue that customers want to self-serve. They want to receive services whenever and wherever they need them.
Uh-huh.
And it's very difficult for a business to provide those cost effectively and not build them into the cost of the product or things of that nature. So it's always a challenge that way. But I truly believe that's what the customers want. I think the challenge is that with many of the existing channels, there's limitations on both sides of the problem. The customer wants an experience that is whenever, wherever, that is useful and intelligent for them, and an organization wants to support that customer, not only in the purchase, but to create that level of brand loyalty that positively even increases their share of wallet for future purchases.
Sure. But I mean, don't you think that also that there's a rush towards adoption of technology because in many respects companies are more interested in reducing the cost to serve than they are in terms of increasing the customer experience, or maybe that's just me being cynical. But also that they rush to technology, but also ignore some of the demographics that exist within their existing customer base and their preferences.
I think you're definitely right. You can see that occur quite a lot. I think there is a drive towards the cost effectiveness of the service channels.
Yeah.
But I think the challenge is also that the customer expectation is that where it used to be, I would pick up the phone and I would talk to you.
Yes.
Then there was email. Then there was a point in between there you could fax, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
But then you could email. And then I had an expectation that I could have a chat with you live.
Yeah.
The buzzword, which I don't like, omnichannel, has just exploded. So all these different channels have emerged that a business fundamentally has to support, but none of the other channels have disappeared. Customers still prefer, in most of the studies that see, a live channel.
Yes.
When they get a consistent experience, when they are not escalated, when there's an individual on the other end of the phone that can actually help them solve the problem.
Yeah.
But interestingly, in some of the more recent studies in the last few years, one of them, which is quite interesting, was an 88,000 consumer study done in the Harvard Business Review that showed that 57% of consumers that ended up on the phone started on the website.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think that's that. There's a thing called I'm sure you're probably familiar with the idea around systems thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think what they would call in systems thinking language or terminology, they would call that situation failure demand.
Yes, very true.
And I think that's the very, very heart of it is some of the biggest kind of problems that many firms have to address is the very fact that how some people bounce from one channel to another channel to another channel to get the answers or the solutions that they want. They start at the obvious places. That might be they look at the manual or they consult the website or whatever, and then they don't find what they're looking for because they want the answers when they want them. And in many respects, they could be at odd hours of the day and or night.
And it is true. And when we think about our busy lives, I think, again, one of the challenges for organizations is, think of it today. We're becoming a mobile-first world.
Yeah.
I travel, I always joke around, I'll walk outside with my pants and forget my pants in the house, but I'll probably have my mobile phone on me.
Yeah, indeed.
And when you're mobile first, your expectations of when you want to solve a problem happen to be in the moment.
Yes.
That moment of truth.
Yeah.
And an organization needs to step back and see how they handle the situation. Where where phone-based, when you're looking at just support, where phone-based interactions were critical, the web itself in general is the next major channel, and the consumer has a device that they're walking around with that enables those channels so readily.
That's very, very true. I mean, we only just need to look at, if you like, our own behavior when we think about whether if we've got a question or we're researching, doing something or buying something new, we turn to either immediate friends and family, we turn to search engines, we turn to social networks, and to ask those questions. And it's about facilitating or enabling us to find those questions, the answers to those questions, as quickly and easily as possible.
As possible, I agree. The challenge is most organizations, for all the money they spend, pull customers into their web environment,
Yeah.
especially when you think of digital advertising. They fail in that last mile.
Yeah, no, indeed. Yeah, it's shocking. I'm afraid to say you call yourself a geek, but actually, many respects, it is technology people, but also people that are very technical in terms of their view of their product and the service that they provide. That people tend to organize things in the language that they use, not in necessarily the language that the customers use.
And I would agree. You know, one of the things you asked me, and it's when I think about one of the key things that I would recommend for individuals when they think about this whole, it's not just about customer service, it's about customer engagement. When you think about that whole problem,
Yeah.
about engaging, understanding, and monetizing from a business's point of view, one of the things I challenge the executives and the management with is step back and ask yourself, how are you providing your solution or services to a consumer today? Go through that experience from the research to the purchase to the support, and ask yourself your engagement strategy, not just your self-service strategy, although that's a critical part in our view, but if your engagement strategy supports customer success and low effort through that. If it doesn't, fix that first.
Well, indeed.
Don't worry about every possible channel you can engage in. Fix the ones that are most likely to be used by the consumer first.
I think that's absolute sound advice, David. And I'd actually tell you what, it rounds off that part of our discussion really sort of like smartly, I think, and very very well. But so let me kind of like ask you. We were talking before we started getting stuck into this interview a bit about IntelliResponse and your plans for 2014 and beyond, and you've got some exciting things on the go. I mean, I don't think they quite include world domination as yet. I don't think, but
we're working on that part.
Very very good. But what's the big plans for 2014?
Well, I think a couple of key areas for us is we're really focusing our efforts on a couple of key areas. Number one, we've had great successes with our voice of customer capability. So taking all those interactions with a consumer, but actually making them actionable, not needing a data scientist in the company, but providing a way for the marketing organizations, the product or the sales organizations to take those interactions and actually understand and monetize them. We're going to be spending a lot more time on our voices area and understanding that voice of customer, because we already have a great intelligent learning agent today, and we'll continue to push that forward, but it's really the understanding and the monetization from a company point of view that really is having a big impact. And, you know, I think the other thing we're looking at is even more personalized interactions between the virtual agent and that end consumer.
Right.
So it's not simply about one of our customers having, you know, a question about, they have a prepaid phone and they need questions answered about what's my balance left and things of that nature, and having those personalized interactions too that drive an even deeper involvement of the virtual agent. And the big goal, besides world domination, we're quickly getting into other points of the world in Australia and Singapore. We've already, you know, we're in the UK. Uses our technology, for example. Although we'll be pushing more, it's really to answer 500 million questions by 2018 through our virtual agent platform. Wow. And that's really kind of our big plan for beyond.
Fantastic. So, David, one final question that I always ask at the end of these interviews, and that is there anything that you would like to shamelessly plug?
Shamelessly plug. Let me think about that for a moment.
I
I have an
always
idea.
always
So
catches people out.
that's always a tough one. Let me say this. Drop a note to myself or anyone at our company and ask about our Forrester assessment. We did a lot of work with Forrester Research last year in developing an assessment capability that would allow an organization to assess their self-service capability.
Right.
Do that as a starting point to what I talked about earlier, kind of eating your dog food and seeing if you like the taste of it. Try that, and I think that will be a great shameless plug for us because we want to help our customers engage, understand, and monetize, kind of the trifecta. But the assessment will get them started.
So what's the
And the
best?
other shameless plug maybe is
Given this is going to go out as a podcast, what would be the best email for that, David?
they can reach me personally. They can reach the company at info@intelliresponse.com.
So that's INTELLI response.com.
Yes. Or
Fantastic.
David.Lloyd, good Welsh spelling, LLOYD at intelliresponse.com.
Fantastic.
And finally, may your days be safe and your New Year's be prosperous is probably the best shameless plug I can end the podcast on given the time of year.
David, that's been brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
Adrian, thank you for the time. It's been a pleasure for IntelliResponse to be able to chat with you as well.